Beyond 3D.
I'll tell you what, Clint, it's been one of those weeks.
It has, and I got a question for you.
Go for it.
I can't say it without laughing.
Go ahead.
What do you call a banana tomorrow?
Oh, no.
You know that you know.
I know the answer. I'm not going to say it. You can say it.
It's a banana. Oh my God. It's so bad.
Oh, wait a minute. I got it. We'll start it again. So the joke is, what is it? What do you call a banana that you'll eat tomorrow? Mañana.
I'm not even going to bother. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Beyond 3D this week.
Oh, my.
How are you, Matt?
I'm pretty good, actually.
I think it was you that let out the big sigh last week, and I asked you what that was all about, didn't I?
It's just one of those things.
I hope listeners really enjoyed Dr. Miller last week.
Oh, I did. It was funny.
I've listened to that interview many, many times, and I still hit new stuff that I didn't pick up with my ear last time.
Literally.
Fantastic. He's a wealth of knowledge, that man. I got a little surprise for you later too, but I'm not going to tell you just yet.
Okay.
Okay.
Very good. Well, what else is going on in the world right now that has really hit your radar?
Mars.
Okay.
I watched a very, very insightful clip the other day that showed in detail underground bases and doorways into Mars.
Wouldn't surprise me.
I know.
It wouldn't surprise me in the least, quite frankly.
So Mars, I've been looking at Mars underground bases. I reacquainted myself this week with Dulce. And for anybody that
Dulce, New Mexico.
Dulce, New Mexico. And if anybody doesn't know anything about what went down at Dulce, I do suggest you look it up and educate yourself.
Yeah. There was supposedly a shootout, for lack of a better term.
Yes, a shootout. Look, without giving anything away, Matt, I mean, like, I could sit here and wax lyrical about Dulce all day, and I know you can as well, and we do encourage listeners to look up that information.
Definitely look it up. It's well worth your while.
Long story short, and please, Matt, correct me anywhere along the line here.
Go for it.
Dulce Deep Underground Military Base.
Yes.
The acronym is DUMB. That is not a joke. That is the people that call it a dumb base is like people that call an ATM machine, automatic teller machine. You don't say machine twice.
Yes.
So Dulce Base is a deep underground military base. It is located in New Mexico.
It is.
It lost its security, would you say, Matt? It lost its security, or the shootout that we're referring to? Do you want to go a little bit deeper into? I know you know
Dulce,
just as much as I do, but more.
Dulce, New Mexico, as far as a base is concerned, is one of the bases where allegedly there is an alien presence, and by alien I do not mean Guatemalans. I mean from other worlds, extraterrestrial. And what was going on there is that they were supposedly working together on different projects. And therefore, there was a conflict. Anytime U.S. military personnel were around any of the so-called extraterrestrials, they were supposed to be unarmed. And what would happen is, I believe the aliens, the extraterrestrials, could actually use telekinetics. And they were not very, very happy if any of the military personnel came around them with any kind of firearm whatsoever. And what happened was someone didn't follow protocol, and that led to an incident because they didn't follow protocol.
And by incident, we're talking shootout.
Yes, we're talking a shootout.
A bloody shootout.
Yes, a big bloody one.
Many levels underground.
Yes.
And it went to hell in a handbasket very quickly, didn't it?
It did.
And that is the urban... look, I use the word urban myth because I don't know anybody who's been to Dulce, or I don't know anyone from Dulce. Dr. Miller, we could speak to him next time and ask him about underground military bases if he knows anything about them. But it's an interesting thing, the fact that there are these underground military bases spread out all over the world. I mean, we even have them here, allegedly in Australia. So
allegedly in Australia, and the other thing that's really interesting is the deep sea bases, where all of these submarines can stay at sea for months upon months at a time. And all of a sudden what tends to happen is they can be refueled, replenished, and everything like that because they have underwater bases as well.
Stargates. That's something else I was looking up this week.
Okay.
Stargates.
What Dr. Miller said on the program last week, I think, is absolutely, positively, and unequivocally true. And it just rings that way for me about Stargates and what these Stargates can do and where they can take people. And quite frankly, they are not just controlled by the military, they are controlled by the military-industrial complex.
Now, again, I did a little bit more homework this week.
Yep.
The CIA
Yes.
and... I've got to double check this. It is the CIA. It's not the FBI, because the FBI, for those people that aren't educated, is federal, whereas they deal with homeland issues.
Homeland issues internally in the United States.
That's right. Whereas the CIA is more of a clandestine organization. International. That's the word I was looking
Absolutely.
for. So a lot of these bases are run by CIA. CIA also have their finger on the pulse of the American U.F.O program that they're running themselves. So what's the correct term for a UFO that's man-made?
Basically, it's a UAP.
Thank you. That's
an unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Thank you. That's what it is. But they do have their own...
Oh, they'll have
Air
their
Force.
own, basically.
Their own clandestine Air Force.
Oh, this is in the dark space projects that they have out there. And a lot of them are also run not by the CIA but also by the Navy, which throws people off because they think the Navy is just going to deal with the seas, but they basically consider space the sea.
Dr. Miller mentioned that last week, that there was two navies, didn't he?
Yeah, there are.
And there's two heads of state for the United States as well, would there not be?
Oh, yeah, there's the president, which is the CEO, and the CEO. We went into this before. The president is basically the CEO, and he has managers beneath him, which are the secretaries of defense, energy, etc. Then they are the commander-in-chief of the military, per se, but... honestly, the Secretary of Defense is the Commander-in-Chief of the military, which is why Dick Cheney had a lovely time when he was back in office in the Bush era. So there is the president that we know of as far as the generic term President of the United States, which is the head of state, but there is also an underground, secret, deep, dark area where there is another president that runs everything, supposedly in the covert world.
Not elected by his
Not elected at all.
Either.
The public had no idea. The public has no idea who it is. It's just like when we were talking about Pine Gap. There is a U.S. attaché, a military attaché to Pine Gap. You never find out that person's name until after they have finished serving the post. It is kept secret. The way it is. Can't get around it. When it comes to Pine Gap and those kind of things, I was really interested as well. You were talking about Mars earlier. I'm dealing a lot with the moon. I've been hearing a lot lately about people who believe that the United States did not land on the moon and the whole thing was false. Now, I personally watched it as a kid. I can remember watching that Saturn V rocket taking off, and as far as I'm concerned, they did go to the moon. I believe that part of what we saw on television was on a sound stage, but for a different reason. And that reason, I believe, is because what they found on the moon, they could not reveal to the public at that time.
I don't think that they could today either. I do think that the public's ready for it and want to know, but I don't think that they're ready to tell us.
Because if they tell you, they're giving away the game as far as they're concerned. They give up the power, and that's what it really comes down to, holding on to power and holding on to control and keeping the status quo.
And I'd also go as far as saying if that one thread was pulled, everything else collapses.
It does. I'd agree to that. I would definitely agree to that. And even on the moon, they are finding many different bases, so to speak, cities and things like that. And there's a beautiful photo I saw the other week that was taken from the back end of the moon. The Russians took a picture of it. And when you look at it, you can see that there is a glass dome over a crater, and underneath this glass dome, as you look at this picture, you are seeing blues, greens, atmosphere in a sense, and you know there's something under that. It's not a naturally occurring phenomenon.
Biodome?
Yeah, that's what it looked like to me.
Let's hope there's no Pauly Shore under there.
But those are the kind of things I think we're looking into as far as Beyond 3D is concerned. And quite frankly, I think it's very important for us to continue to find out what's the latest information on what's going on in those so-called projects. To that end, I've arranged to have a person that I know brief us from time to time on what's going on as far as militarily in the United States as a person who has been in the armed forces for over 30 years.
Can we give him a cool name?
We're going to have to give him a good code name, so that
you can give him a good code name.
Yeah, I can do that, and it would be well worth it because he can give us information, if it is a he, on a lot of things that are going on out there right now. It could be a she.
Could be transgender.
Could be. Androgynous. You never know. I don't think they would like me saying that, but we'll see what happens with that. But we're going to start doing that going forward in the new year. We are going to be briefed on a monthly basis on what's going on militarily as far as the United States is concerned. So that'll be great.
Now, getting back to our show last week, the feedback that I got was very, very positive. And getting back to Dr. Miller again, for those of you that haven't experienced him, if that was your first experience, all I can say is brace yourself, because here at Beyond 3D we do have a plan to get him to talk to everybody on a regular basis.
Absolutely.
And he is like the Tasmanian devil that's just eaten an encyclopedia of knowledge. He just spits it out at 1,000,000 miles an hour.
He does spit it out at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and what you have to do is try to rein it in, because if you could really, anyone who can talk that fast and has that much knowledge in that brain, if you can allow them the space, what happens is the layers go deeper and deeper and deeper, and you really get to those jewels of information that just you go, whoa. And when you hear those things, you know in the heart and in the head and in the gut that what you're hearing is the truth.
Last time we spoke to him, I didn't have a pen handy. I will make sure that happens next time, because I couldn't keep up with him, Matt. I was trying to recall what he was saying, and it wasn't until we listened back to the interview.
Well, that's what you have to do.
Yeah, you have to listen to it many times. So if you would like to check that out, please go to the Beyond 3D part of the RPP website, and you can download our podcasts.
Yeah, the podcast will be up on the website. We have a great guy that does the podcasting here, and he will have them up usually the week after they're on the air.
You know what?
And get them.
I don't think we give Michael enough credit.
No, we don't, but we'll have to do that now. Michael does a very good job.
Michael, thank you for doing our podcast. We appreciate it.
It is. Yeah, we do.
Now, Matt, what have you been looking at this week also?
Oh, as I said, I was looking a little bit at the stuff going on the moon, but just in general, watching what's going on election-wise in the United States, seeing how Trump is doing lately and all the things that he's up to, talking to a very, very good friend of mine who is a lead editor at a big newspaper on the East Coast of the United States, and also a big member of the Republican Party, and finding out how he actually feels about Donald Trump being the front runner.
I love Donald Trump for all the wrong reasons. He makes me laugh.
He does.
Because he has no idea. Beyond 3. You know what I'm upset about at the moment? Just getting off topic.
Yeah, we'll go for it. What is it?
NASA. I'm sick of the cover-up. I'm sick of the. I understand that they get their funds from the American government. I understand. There once was a time when what they did was in the spirit of exploration, and it was in the spirit of discovering new things. Now it's the NASA business model seems to be hiding information, not being forthcoming with stuff that they know. Now, we know they get their money, Matt, from the United States government and the Treasury coffers and.
Yeah, they do. But quite frankly, a lot of the people that work at NASA are contractors.
Oh, I'm not talking about the people themselves. I'm talking about the organization as an overall.
The organization overall, yeah. I have no idea what's going on, and somebody actually made a very valid point as far as the fact that things are being hidden, not just with NASA, but with the military. A mini version of the space shuttle lands at Edwards Air Force Base, wherever it is out there, in the desert after 2 years in space. And the first you hear about it is when it's landing. What was it doing up there for 2 years, circling the Earth?
Well, NASA belongs to America, not Australia. So if NASA was an Australian body, I'm sure there'd be some way in which you could find out or ask the questions, or freedom of information,
That's
or
the thing.
all those type of things. But for a space organization to perform a 2-year operation and have it not covered in the media, and then let people know, it's taxiing down the runway and pulling in right now. Been and gone, done, dusted, move along, nothing to see.
Yeah, that was quite interesting, that whole thing. But as far as NASA is concerned, I was amazed when they said they destroyed all of the drafts or architectural design drawings for the Saturn V, for the Saturn V rocket, and there's none left. I'm surprised by a lot of the things that supposedly NASA is doing, and I believe personally that there's a lot of things going on out in space that we will never know. I think what tends to happen is, I know Obama recently signed the act which allows people to mine asteroids and things like that, so that's great, as far as privately. So therefore, no one country can claim anything out in space and say it's under their jurisdiction. Therefore, companies like SpaceX will be able to ultimately go up there and really start exploring. There are other companies out there that are actually, you can literally buy your own little mini satellite, load it up with your equipment, and they will blast that into space for you. I don't think it'll get as high as the space station, but with trajectories and everything and the proper cameras, you can literally have your own surveillance of the planet for about 3 months before it decays orbit and comes back in and burns up in the atmosphere. And you can do something like that for probably around $50,000.
Okay.
Have your own little satellite up there and do things. It is opening up what's going on out in space. NASA as an entity, NASA as an organization, in my opinion, does not have anywhere near the clout it used to have.
Oh, no.
The funding has been cut drastically over the decades.
Hang on, can I just stop for a sec?
Yeah.
The funding, I agree with you, the funding has been stopped drastically. The public funding. So
Yes, the public funding has been.
Not the backroom funding, not the secret space program funding.
Yeah, the secret, but that's the whole thing. I think NASA is the public face.
That's right.
As opposed to what's going on in the back doors. And that's why when 9/11 happened in Rumsfeld said there was $2.5 to $3 trillion missing from the coffers. Most of that money, most people know this by now, most of that money went into the so-called black projects. This is why there are a lot of things going on people don't hear about, but the money has to come from somewhere. So this money is diverted from one, borrow from Peter to pay Paul. You divert from one area to put it into another. You do this along with, it's not just the government, this is government in bed with private industry. So you're talking socialism at best.
Northrop Grumman.
All those kind of things. Northrop Grumman, all these different companies that are out there, the JPL laboratory out in California as well. I mean, it looks like on the surface that it is a government agency or a government think tank or government laboratory, but in fact it's privately owned.
Lockheed Skunk Works.
Lockheed Skunk Works is another big one that does a lot of work around a lot of the military aircraft, the hardware. These are contractors that are literally bidding for contracts to build the newest, latest technology that the military will use, especially when it comes to Air Force technology and aviation. Lockheed Skunk Works does a lot of work in those areas. They do a lot of work also covertly, backward engineering a lot of the things that have managed to fall through our atmosphere and hit the ground.
That is not man-made.
Yeah. Well, at least not men from here.
That's right.
So those kind of things are going on. There's a lot going on with this. A lot of theories are out there about what really happened in 1947, I believe it was, in Roswell. What really happened on the West Coast.
I can't believe you said... Sorry, Matt, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I can't believe you said that, because I was actually contemplating that this morning. Public knowledge now, over the decades, public knowledge has become more and more solidified in knowing what happened at Area 51. Not the intricate details, but the fact that an event took place and roughly what that event is now public knowledge. People know that type of stuff, and the name Area 51 is bantered and thrown around, and a lot of people don't actually realise there's an Area 52 as well, and a area.
There's a 53 and a 54.
There is a 53 and 54.
Now, if people don't know, and in Australia you wouldn't necessarily know, Area 51, you think of just runways and buildings and things like that in a surrounded area. If you filled your car tank up with petrol and got to the border of Area 51 and kept on driving through the area, you would run out of gas or petrol before you got off of the boundary of Area 51. It's huge.
Let's put you in a green environmentally friendly 4-cylinder car that runs on the smell of an oily rag, and you still wouldn't make it.
No, not even close. It's a huge area that they're talking about here, and there are areas that size and larger in Utah. There are areas that size and larger in Wyoming. There are areas that size and larger in Arizona and New Mexico. Nevada, in and of itself, government-owned land. The state of Nevada, 80+% of the land is owned by the government. Therefore, you can get a lot of things happening from a military standpoint that most of the general public will never, ever find out about. Because you're on government land, it's private property in that regard. You can drive on the roads in some of these areas, and if you just happen to see something weird and funky, though, well, too bad. That's just the way it is. They're not going to explain it to you.
Well, they're not, and especially when they're housing military craft like the Aurora, the X-37B. What else do they have? The RQ-180. That's another secret military plane, and the lovely Black Star. That's my favourite one, the Black Star. That's the one that sits out there in orbit, that in the ionosphere. Or the
the Black Knight.
The Black Knight.
Yeah.
There's a Black Star as well, the long-running Black Star space program.
Well, the Black Knight's supposedly the one that's been up there for 1,500 or so years at least. And if it's been up there 1,500 years, I'll guarantee it's been up there 15,000. Be honest about it. It's just ridiculous. But when you talk about these kind of things, we can look at it from a mundane point of view where we have science, and science has to try to come up with different technologies that will keep us going forward. Then you can look at it from another, or a more esoteric point of view. And what happens when you look at it from that point of view, anything is possible. Anything in this universe is possible. Therefore, when you mentioned the Stargate earlier, it does not surprise me that something like that would exist that would allow you to go from this point to this point. And there's nothing new under the sun. It's got to exist out there. It's just the fact that information is held in secret, and they don't want the masses to find out about it. You don't have to talk about that. You can go back to the Constantine era, the Justinian codes with the Bible, and how certain books were lifted out of the Bible because of people that were so-called slaves or serfs or something like that knew that they could have another life, be reincarnated, and they could actually rule. How is the current ruler going to be able to control the masses? They won't. Therefore, control information.
It's all about monopolizing power, isn't it?
You control the information, you got them.
I was actually contemplating, again, because I do a lot of thinking. I don't have much else to do. Well, look, when you're knee-deep in this stuff every day, Matt, that's all you do, isn't it? Is constantly trying to join dots and throw things up and see where it sticks, and find information. And new information that's more credible is coming to the surface every day, with lots of different things. And I was contemplating yesterday the fact that I'm seeing, like, I know I mentioned it last week, and actually the week before as well, I'm seeing all this stuff coming through about Stargates and CERN and alternate realities and parallel universes. This is stuff that was science fiction when I was a kid, that mainstream science is pimping as factual stuff. Now, this is all information that you and I know about because we go looking for that information, so we educate ourselves. But it's in contrast and in comparison the same principle as trying to explain to Indigenous Aboriginal Australians what they were seeing for the first time when they glanced those white sails coming over the horizon towards them from those big long ships. The implications on how their lives were going to spiral and change. And I'm not going to say change for the better or change for the worse. I mean, that could be debated forever. But the technologies that were coming down the line that were associated with those big white sails on those ships that were coming to their reality, that's kind of like what we're going through at the moment. The drip feeding of Stargates and parallel universes, and mainstream science is pushing this information out there, and investigative reporters and whistleblowers and people like ourselves, or we present this information to our listeners, so that when stuff does come out, you're not caught with your pants down going, I knew nothing about this. I don't want to be an Indigenous I don't want to feel like an Indigenous Australian watching those white sails coming over the sunset, over the horizon,
Right.
and not being aware or educated of all the technology and all the baggage and all the ways it can be used in a
That's for
negative
sure.
way that's coming behind it.
Yeah.
So education is power in that sense, I guess.
But the other thing we want to look for is we want to look for the positive stuff coming out of it.
Oh, and that's what we're all about.
And this is the thing. A lot of times the media is portraying a lot of the negativities that are coming around and the negative things that can possibly happen. What about the positive things that are out there that this technology can bring? What about the fact that once you open up yourself to the fact that this universe and this world is larger than you could possibly imagine, what are the possibilities? They never want you to look at the possibilities because they want to control the way you think.
I watched a very scary documentary this week, and you saying that actually reminded me of it. And the documentary is called Racing Extinction. And I highly recommend everyone to check it out and to look it up and to try and find a copy of it if you can. In a nutshell, it just showed, there was a documentary that showed the alarming, frightening rate of extinction that's happening all around the world at the moment. And especially, it didn't touch on Fukushima, but it did touch on the fact that if all the algae in the ocean died, we'd all be taking our last breath. Because most, as a kid, you grew up being told that your oxygen came from the Amazon, and now science have discovered that it actually comes from algae out in the oceans. But the oceans are boiling, and they're full of radiation, lots of radiation, lots of pollution. It's a very high acidic environment where corals are burning up and dying. But the positives, back to the positives, the positives in this documentary were the people that were trying to change our world and doing it through the kids, through children. And Dr. Miller mentioned that last week, that he's working with children now. So these documentary filmmakers would do things like that, go out into traffic, and they would project onto carbon emissions that were coming out of the back of exhaust pipes, the chemical symbols. They'll project them onto the smoke as the smoke would come out of the car, and onto the side of buildings. They'd show humpback whales breaching the water, and with specific scientific information about the rates of extinction and what's happening in the world. Fantastic documentary. So that was a positive. People out there actually doing something, not along the lines of being a greenie, but doing something about protecting the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. I'll have to look at that one. I'm looking at it on the website. I brought up a little bit of a website here so I can take a quick look to see what's going on. So that's something that I'll have to put on the list and absolutely watch out and see what's going on with that. So that's really good. Yeah. When you mentioned what you were just talking about, and you mentioned the fact that they would put the chemical symbols on the exhaust.
On the emissions, yeah. So the CO2 that was coming out the back of the car, they were projecting the chemicals that were made up in that pollution and projecting it on the smog as on the pollution that was coming out of the car. Very, very powerful. A very powerful image to see. They pull up near a power plant that had giant chimney stacks, and with these giant projectors mounted on the roof of cars, they were mobile enough to be able to beam a light from the projector up onto the smoke and project all the chemicals that were up there in the sky. Fantastic to see.
Interesting, because what I just envisioned with that was what Dr. Emoto was doing in Japan with the water, the messages in the water, and freezing the water crystals and seeing what the patterns were. And what he was doing was projecting positive words to see how that would affect the water, and projecting negative words to see how that would affect the water, playing positive sounds and vibrations the same way, and what was perceived as negative sounds and vibrations. And when you look at what he accomplished by doing that, and you saw the patterns that would be created just by writing a word on a piece of paper and putting that on a test tube with the water in it, it was absolutely fascinating. And so what they're trying to do with this, you're saying, is they are showing a physical representation, not just the smog, but everything that's in it, and you can see exactly what's going into the atmosphere and how those things are poisoning our atmosphere and everything around. So that's a fascinating way of doing it. So that's something we have to look at.
I know that it can be said that ignorance is bliss, and I know a lot of the time, and I'm guilty of it myself, I very rarely, up until recently, stopped and thought about, where does this pen in my hand come from? What kind of energy was used to make this pen?
Right.
Does the energy I use to document information using this pen equal the energy that was used to create the pen in the first place. And I guarantee you, they're not the same.
But what you can do, the positive aspect of it is it could have a negative connotation. The way it was made, where it was made, it could have been made in a factory where people were being paid 50 cents an hour or something like that to work. The positive thing you can do for it is every time you become aware of that, what you do is you cleanse it energetically, energize it, and bless the person or the being that made that. And that way you're giving them, that person and that tool, a bit of positive energy. It's all about energy follows thought. So if those are your thoughts, that's what'll come through.
Okay, so Matt, while we're talking about throwing out positive vibes to the universe, something special happened in Mexico City recently, didn't it?
Yeah, looking at this right now, 100,000 unite to participate in massive global meditation for peace. And there's a picture up, and what we can do is we can put that picture up on the Beyond 3D Facebook page for you to look at. And yeah, once again, there's somebody that plans or gets out there and tries to do something positive, send positive energy to the planet. And so 100,000 kids got together in Mexico in order to meditate for peace. I'll read this to you a little bit. The Angel of Independence was filled to maximum capacity today during the 5th Global Meditation for Peace, led by Dr. Joseph Michael Levy, it looks like, on the 29th of November in Mexico City. This has been happening around the world lately. I can remember a very good friend of mine here, what we did back in 2000 almost, so 2001, we decided we were going to have a big meditation in Melbourne, and we did something called 10,000 Twin Hearts. And we didn't get 10,000 people together. We got about 500 people together at Festival Hall in Melbourne, and we did a meditation with a meditation master from the Philippines, and it was just a really fantastic energy. So what people are doing is they're getting together in what they call key locations. So we're talking Switzerland, Italy, Brazil, Germany, the Czech Republic, Korea, Greece, Trinidad, Taiwan, Argentina, etc., countries all around the world, including Australia. And people are getting together, and these people are meditating, and that is a very important thing to do. When people get together, like-minded individuals, and combine their energies and concentrate on something, many things can happen. And I'll give you another quick story. Let me see, who's the guy's name?
I love your stories.
Okay, Richard Hoagland. God help him.
Yep.
But I'll say it anyway. You can edit if you'd like. There was a group of people in the United States that when they found out that former President Jimmy Carter had brain cancer, got together and they were going to do a prayer chain for him, and they did prayers to help heal him. And if you look at the news stories now, Jimmy Carter's x-rays, photos, whatever they take inside the body, they cannot find any cancer anymore.
Wow.
There's power of prayer, there's power in meditation. When people get together, like-minded people, and they think on a certain topic, a certain subject, a certain area, or another person, they can heal.
You know who else has got fantastic energy?
Uh-oh, here we go.
I've got him on the line again.
Yes. Oh my God, that's beyond fantastic energy.
I know. So our last probably 15 minutes of tonight's show, I'm going to dedicate to this man. So, Matt, without further ado, I'd like to... Actually, you know what? I bet a lot of people don't know who I'm talking about.
Okay.
Do you?
No, go ahead.
Do you know his initials?
No, go ahead.
Okay, Matt, so the person I've got on the line today has a lot of knowledge in regards to agriculture, appearances, bioengineering, biological threats, breaking news, chemtrails, consciousness, EMP threats, energy, environment collapse, events and seminars he does on the talking circuit, global warming, anybody, I'll keep going, transcendental meditation, pole shifts, Nazis down Antarctica or the Arctic.
Then I know who you're talking about.
Go on. I've got him on the line. He's been listening to us chat. Hello, Dr. Richard Allen Miller. How are you? Beyond. 3.
D. I'm good. Good. Yes.
Absolutely, Doc.
I just got finished talking to a friend of mine in Hawaii, so We're good now. I'm good to go. What is your first question?
The question I need to ask you right now, I have been hearing a lot about this, and I have some friends in the military myself that, well, that's a second question. I'll go there later. What I wanted to find out about was underground bases. Now, a lot of people talk about Dulce, a lot of people talk about things like that in the States. Here in Australia, we have Pine Gap, and we were just talking to a friend of ours who stated that he used to work out in Alice Springs, and actually that he knew for a fact that Pine Gap, or what is now called Pine Gap that everybody knows about, is at least 5 stories underground. So we wanted to get your background on what you know about underground bases, not necessarily in Australia. If you do, great, but basically in the United States and what you've done.
Everywhere. But I am quite familiar with underground tunnels and bunkers because I manage one.
Oh my goodness. Stop. You've just got me. That's it.
The underground is that right now in North America, you can go from Maine all the way down to Florida underground without ever having to come to the surface. In Grants Pass, Oregon, and the so-called Oregon Caves, there is a network of complexes that start from Gold Beach all the way down into the Trinity Alps in California. Now, that's the state of Jefferson. That is what's defined as the state of Jefferson, the free state of Jefferson. By the way, there is a science fiction story out called Black Road about 2023 and what's happening in the free state of Jefferson. It's kind of cool. I think you'll find that like a William Gibson thing. Now, the caverns have been here for a long time, and I saw a bunker that was poured with the same concrete the bridges were here in Grants Pass in 1918. Concrete bunkers. They were doing mostly gold. Then they became Line and the first line of defense in America, and now they've been enhanced. And the Colorado Springs facility with NORAD has all literally moved in the last 15 years into Grants Pass, Oregon. The comm systems are out in the Applegate. The primary bunkers are up in up Evans Creek in Weimar, which is near Rogue River. All along the Rogue River, there are underground entrances into the caves. If you walk the rivers, the Rogue River, you would find egress into these caverns. You can drive up some of these logging roads that are fire roads, and out will come a bunch of military to stop you. And that will be like a back-end entrance into these things. All the different hills in the state of Jefferson, and that's southern Oregon, northern California, and a little slip in Nevada, are all connected. There's one new tunnel that was recently put in Weimar that goes all the way down to Heimpal. That's 4.5 hours by motorcycle. And Seattle had a big deal when they were doing the underground, the viaduct. They're redoing the viaduct. They're putting tunnels underground. They have this big bore that's about 30 feet high, and it uses special laser things that cut stone. And it jammed because it ran into something already there. Seattle has an underground city from 1902. By when I was a kid, we used to go down into the manholes covers, which later got called the Seattle Underground. That was a magazine I started. It still exists in Seattle. When the earthquake happened and Skid Row became buried, in all of this stuff. That's where the old Seattle used to be. Was not down where downtown Seattle is. It used to be down in Pioneer Square, and all of that's underground. All those underground stores and things like that, some of them have entrances that go down in. And now they're doing tours and shit like that, but back then, the tunnels were just starting to be discovered. Why was Colorado Springs moved? Primarily, all the equipment in there is outdated, and it was cheaper just to move everything than to go in and re-outfit it. Further, I think some of the caverns here are even better than Colorado Springs. I know the Midwest has a bunch of them because I did a thing with Dennis Kucinich where I networked rural communities and underground bunkers. There were 8 of them in 4 states. The one I had the most fun with was the one in Wichita, where Arlo Guthrie, his daughter, and his granddaughter came out and sang to us. It was very cool. These are communities that are like these sustainable lifeboats where they have infrastructure for self-reliance. And I think we're going to see a change in things, in the way things are doing. Underground is not necessarily safe, because in the day after tomorrow, you're going to need at least 10 feet of earth between you and the frost line. And when I talk about it, just like in the movie, it's going to drop 10 degrees per second. Nothing lives, and it goes down to minus 100 before everything reboots and goes back into normal. Figure probably a 6-week to 3 to 6 week event, and then you come back up to snowpack that will be on the ground probably for 2 years, and you won't have anything that lives. That means if you go down underground, you're going to have to take your seed and your mycorrhizae with you. Now, that's what I know about underground. There's a book called Underground Bases and Bunkers, and there's a whole chapter just on Grants Pass. This is Spook Central here. The Mormons are here, the Seventh-day Adventists, the Ku Klux Klan, the Posse Comitatus, they're all here, Oath Keepers. They all have undergrounds. And a guy next door to me has just put in, I'm up on top of a hill in the outsides of Grants Pass, and he just put in a 3-acre bunker. We're not talking about cargo boxes now. We're talking about like 3 solid acres of underground bunker. And so, preppers, oh yeah, they're all over the place here. And I don't know that that's going to save you if Nibiru's real. And Nibiru is going to be like one of those kinds of events that you won't really know what's going on until it's actually in your face happening. And right now, there are a bunch of biblicals that are touting, and there it is, see it? There it is, out there by the sun. It's not a sundog, it's da-da-da. And candidly, I don't know. I can tell you something is affecting the perturbations and orbitals on everything, including the sun. The heliosphere is heating up. It would suggest there is global warming on Mars, Venus, and Pluto. So there was a one moment on Earth when there was a backlash or reverse magnetic field change from solar winds. Usually, the solar winds from the sun will create a direction of magnetic fields. And what happened is the heliosphere, this little bubble of electromagnetics from the sun, dragged through what are called dragon's tails. They are ionized streamers of gas in deep space that created a frictional back push for about 6 to 12 hours on the Earth. Back, I think it was in 2010. I think it was in 2010, there was a reverse polarity. Right now, the true magnetic north is changing. The Earth wobbles, and the Inuit are saying that the sky's changed. That means the pole has shifted, literally. And Bert Bolin, University of Stockholm, Sweden, is suggesting that we're about to have a pole shift that could be catastrophic. If Nibiru is real and came through near close Earth with high nickel content or something like that, with gravitational fields, we could have a 90-degree pole shift like Bolin is talking about, which is a near extinction event. And it doesn't matter how deep you go in the ground. Now let's talk about deeper ground. In Antarctica, the cave there, I've been in it, is over a mile high, and it has weather. It has. I wasn't the lead on that one. I was basically the physicist brought in on bioluminescence. There was a bacteria that grows on the walls that created light, so you can see down there like the sun. And they want to know how that works, and that was my expertise. And I worked under this woman that was running the project. And when I was there, I saw the Nazi base for 19 subs. There was a secondary base over there that was 14th century Viking base, which means it's all there. And when I did that interview, and I think it was on Red Ice or something, a captain from the Royal Air Force in England, he's 20 years older, 10 years older than me. I think he was in his 80s. He called me and he said, he was part of that mop-up crew that went in to take out the Nazi base in the 60s when Kennedy went after him. And what he said was there were some Nazis that escaped into deeper caverns. And my guess, that means way down, like where they're drilling into the Moa or the Mel. And that's like 100 miles down. And those caves are in the earth as well. There is biblical reference after Noah of another group of humans that escaped the floods by going into deeper caverns. My guess is the reason we're not speaking German right now is that those Nazis ran into something down below them and they stopped that nonsense. I don't know what it is. It might be a gray. Who knows? Like abyss, where you have entities in habitats we can't simply go to that are existing, like the trenches and things like that. Technologies, I don't know. I do know that the fact that we're not speaking German with the so-called 1,000-year war would suggest that something stopped that nonsense. Certainly wasn't us. I remember when Admiral Burr, I've seen videos of the Russian fleets, films of our Captain Burr's fleets going in and losing 3 ships to Foo Fighters and jets that did not exist then. Where did those all come from? I have no idea what it all means. My part was just this very narrow part of bioluminescence with bacteria. And with that concept of the mantle also holding caverns, I know that that's where the second Bush went when he invaded Iraq going after the Stargate. He went up into the northern part of Iraq where the Yazidi, it's a cult group there, have described in Isaiah Joseph's book called Devil Worship or the Sacred Traditions of the Yazidi. They talk about a Stargate. And that was pre-Christian devil worship, which suggested, and I think the reason second Bush went in was to get the Stargate because his father couldn't find it. And the second Bush went in with tomography, and that's when, right after the invasion, he got on board that ship, all his uniform and all his shit on it, and he said, we got it, the war's over. And then, of course, it wasn't, because it was all about war and oil and, that kind of thing. But they got the Stargate. However, I happen to have a copy of the Yazidi in my library, and I can tell you there is mention of a second Stargate, just like in the movie. In fact, that's where the original Stargate writers got their concept.
I was about to say that. That's literally, when you describe that, that's exactly what was going on in this Stargate series. They even had an episode where they went underground and found a civilization that was German in origin. They had a Nordic look about them, and all of a sudden, remember that? All that stuff was there.
The Greys may not be alien. They might be evolved humans from the flood that escaped into deeper caverns. That's why they got gray and no melatonin and the pigments and whatever. I don't know. I have had very little close encounter experience. I have close encounter. I did some stuff with the government. I did 2 artifacts. And candidly, what I've seen, what I know, I don't know if it's aliens or other directions of hominoids. I don't know how that all works. What I do know is the technology I looked at, I couldn't tell if it was alien or pre-epoch, like from a different time zone. Like when they had dance, like Ghost Dance and Whirling Dervish, where they could change space-time. I've seen that happen. How are the pyramids built? I don't know. What I do know is that sound and movement, like Tai Chi and whatever Ghost Dance, has something else going on there. And I don't know how that all works. That's one of the things I'm, curiously studying now. So stay tuned.
I'll tell you what, you will have to stay tuned because we're going to have to take another break here on Beyond 3D. We are talking to Dr. Richard Allen Miller, and we will return.
Beyond 3D. Matt, I'm unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today. We've run out of time.
That's not a good thing, but in a sense it's a good thing because we can always continue.
He talks at a million miles an hour, doesn't he?
That's for sure.
And he's full of so much knowledge. We have to get him back again.
Yes, that's all. Look, honestly, that's the best we can do. We have to do it that way because the information is just too good.
Can we not make this the Christmas summer of Dr. Rich?
Yeah, that's probably a very good idea.
I think we should just get him in here and he can run Beyond 3D for the next couple of weeks.
We'll ship him down to Australia for a bit.
All right, awesome. All right, Matt. So that's it for another week.
Yes, absolutely. We will all catch you next week for another edition. Take care of yourselves and do yourself a favor. Really be aware of what's around you. It might really surprise you.
Good night, everybody, and be safe.
Good night.
Just because you haven't experienced it doesn't mean it doesn't exist.